So now that we got everything all packed up, I thought I would give you a little look as to what it looks like when it's mounted on the bike. We're just preparing today the last of preparations on the bike, and we'll be loading them up tomorrow afternoon, ready to go to West Virginia to stage for a departure, hopefully on Monday if everything goes well. All right, so here's my bike loaded out, ready to go. You'd seen in the prior videos the bags that I'd packed. We got one on each side, and the way they're designed, there's this holster that holds the bag on the bike, and that holster stays with the bike all the time. It's tied off here and tied off on the back to keep it secure, and then just straps in. So have a bag on each side, tent pole bag, and 3 storage bags. That's all there is to it. And then on top, I've added another bladder. It's a 4-liter water bladder, so we can get extended range of water as well as the fuel. And we already got the fuel addressed in this case with my larger tank, 4.5 gallon tank. And then tuck a hat in here too, so we can put that on if we stop. And I then carry the footwear that I plan to use when I'm not in the riding boots, and I just strap them to the outside. Saves room and makes them easy to access. So that is how we're packed out. That all weighs about 50 pounds, give or take. And we have the last little bit of storage here in the front. It has some tools and a tube that we talked about. One of the upgrades we did on both of the bikes is to replace the stock tires with more aggressive tires. And what I mean by aggressive is something with fewer knobs with more space in between to allow better traction in sand and mud and things that might pack into it. And so you can see here the tire that's on there, different tread pattern compared to what is stock. And we're very excited to see the difference. We've ridden most of our other rides on the stock tires, and we're looking forward to seeing how this can improve the traction. And front, similarly for the front tire, see the difference there in the tread pattern, much more aggressive, something that'll do better in the off-road conditions. And yet both tires are still street legal, so we're okay running these on the highway as well. On the front of the bike, I've removed the turn signals that would normally stick out, and I've replaced them with these LED fork wraps, so something that won't get involved if we tip over. No damage there. Similarly on the back, there was a large section that hung down with a tail light and blinkers on each side. I've removed that. That all gets replaced by this unit that provides all the lights that are for turning and stopping and running lights. And then a loosely mounted plate holder so that that can take a beating and keep on ticking. Here on the back, similar to the front, we've added some protection both to the rotor and the brake caliper to give them some hardening from the trail. A couple other things that I've done is I've replaced the stock pegs with these are a little wider, a bigger platform, but more importantly, they allow me to drop the pegs a good portion of an inch, giving me a little more room in the cockpit. It doesn't sound like much, but it is helpful. I also changed the tip on the brake pedal because the stock one was much shorter, and this is kind of actually recessed in from this housing, and I was finding I was missing that a lot. Now it's something you would get used to, but I just decided to extend this out so I can find it with my boot more readily. Then we added a guard here to keep the heat of that exhaust off your person. So one other thing I'll talk about this bike, this KTM is a bit more of a high performance engine. They recommend shorter intervals for changing oil. Actually, the specification that comes from the factory is the oil change every 15 hours, which is not practical for the trip we're doing, and neither is it necessary. There's a lot of debate about that, but the specification from the factory really talks about service intervals if you're using this bike hard, right? So it could be hard enduro riding or even some light motocross. high revs. And so that's not us trail riding, and so my intention is to run that. I'm gonna do it in terms of miles. I'll probably run about 1,000 miles, which would be about a week of travel. And what I intend to do is I have one change of oil here. I've got 1 liter of oil that I'll put in this bag. And I also have a small funnel that I'm going to carry because it's a little hard to hit the crank, fill a hole in the crank case, and some gloves. That will, and we'll buy some oil along the way. Another thing that we're doing on both of our bikes is setting the preload on the spring. So you got the suspension back here. As this wheel travels up and down, it's supported by this shock absorber and spring combination. And weight makes a difference, right? And so if it's too soft, and based on the load, you'll get a lot of bounce. That's really not good for control. And so we have weighed us and our gear, and basically you screw this in or out to, on this model anyway, to change the preload, or how tight that spring is. And so we've balanced that out for the weight that we'll be carrying. Tent pole bag. The tent pole bag is going to empty towards this end, and I'm going to be putting in here maybe some glasses or a goggle wipe or other things that I might want to keep handy. Space is precious, and so we'll use everything we can get. The last bag I have is a tank bag, and I got a very small one so it doesn't interfere with standing or moving a very forward ride. And what I plan to carry in it is a charger for GoPro batteries, and connect it up to one of the USB adapters I have here. And then bonus quiz. Here's a quiz for you. What is this? The answer is it's a bidet. Use it with a drinking bottle to take care of what needs to be taken care of on the trail. The last little bit of space I'm using is I'm carrying some spare shift levers, a spare shift lever and a spare brake and clutch lever for the bike, and I just strapped them in underneath this rack here, out of the way. Don't expect to need them, but they sure will be handy if we happen to go down and break something. Up front here, just to show you some of the mods that I put on the bike. On the front here, I've installed a guard for the front brake rotor. It just prevents damage in case there's rocks that might come along and strike it. And that would not be a good day to bend that up. The tire itself, you may find these to be curious. These are weights. The reason for the weights is opposite these, we have a rim lock. A device that locks the tire to the rim so that they don't spin relative to each other. There'll be places where we'll want to lower our air pressure in order to go through sand, as one example, and we don't want the tire to spin. It's not so critical on the front because you're not applying power, but on the rear tire it's a big deal, because if you have low pressure, either by choice or by accident, and then apply power and spin that tire on the rim, you'll have an instant flat because it'll shear off the valve stem. Up front here we've got guards to protect your hands as well as the levers. I've replaced the stock mirrors with something that folds out of the way when you don't need them and can take a hit if you go down. The Trail Tech is a computer designed for off-road use. It has a lot of features I won't go into. You can have somebody else describe them better than I, but these are a terrific device. One of the features we like about it is what they call buddy tracking. It's a radio frequency antenna, and other riders with the same system can join in, and then you can see each other. So Jack and I will be able to see each other on the trail. The advantage being, if it's a dusty condition, you don't want to ride close together, but you do want to be able to follow where the other guy's going in the event we're off trail and not following GPS guidance. So this allows us to keep separate and yet stay together. I also have a device here that satellite device that allows us, well, it's also GPS, but we're going to use it for satellite tracking and also two-way communication via satellite. We'll have a second satellite device that'll be mounted here, and that'll be the one that all of you on the website will be able to follow us on, so you can keep track of where we're at if you're interested. So that is it. We are ready to go.